Guys, welcome back to Snakes and Adders Reptile Advice. This is like a bit of a follow-on. We did a video a bit back where I was stood at the counter and we explained UVB and vitamin D3 and the way that it creates bone in the body. And we were incredibly fortunate to have our video shared by one of the founder members of the Reptile Lighting Facebook group, Francis Baines, who pretty much is regarded as a demigod in UVB circles, along with Roman Murren, who's on there as well. And they were both incredibly complimentary, and for that I'm incredibly grateful. There were some quibbles about things that I mentioned in the video, and I thought that this would be a great opportunity to maybe discuss them, and we can have a debate or a conversation. Potentially I'm going to try and share this to the Reptile Lighting group and allow the conversation to take place there as well as on the shop page, and obviously we'll share to YouTube as we normally do as well. So what was it that the quibbles were? The quibbles were the recommendation for providing UVB lighting for animals with severely reduced melanophore content in their skin, so amelanistics, leucistics, some of the very light leopard geckos, some of the very light snakes. And this was therefore a bone of contention. I think probably what I need to do to qualify the reasons for why I said what I said was that we're a shop. So at which point we have gathered experience over, between me and Paul at Snakes and Adders, 70 years of combined reptile keeping. Now, rightly or wrongly, we would prescribe the use previously of Nutribol with any of our insect feeding reptiles, the tortoises, uromastics, such like. And the point being that this contains synthetic D3 as mentioned in the UVB video. And we know that for the example of leopard geckos, that there's longevity records that potentially are reaching 20 years. Now, it's pretty clear that we can argue that that has been achieved using synthetics because it's a relatively modern thing for the reptile keeping public at large to apply UVB lighting to animals that were previously erroneously thought of as nocturnal when they're actually crepuscular, which is dawn and dusk. So we know for a fact that there's potentially the opportunity to still have pretty respectable lengths of longevity whilst using the synthetic D3, but current research is pointing to the fact that overexposure to synthetic D3 can create fatty liver and fatty kidneys. So as a shop, we draw upon our own experiences to be able to prescribe something. So it doesn't escape me that when I asked a bunch of questions on the Reptile Lighting group, the simple answers were, we don't know. The research hasn't been done. It needs to be done, but we can't find anybody to fund the research and get it done. So therefore, we go with what we think, our experience, our research, which is cool. There's no, I'm not. This isn't a beef video, but I have to be able to communicate with my customers correctly. And if I say, and it does boil down to pounds and pence. You need to buy a UV rig for your leopard gecko. That's an extra 50, 60, 70 pounds, please. Well, why do I need it? Well, it's going to help it create bone. Does it definitively need it? Yes, but why? Well, how much? What strength tube am I supposed to take? This is the problem. Obviously, in the UVB video, we also talked about the thickness of skin and therefore the level of natural transmission. So the skin for animals that occur in very bright, exposed, hot environments, generally the skin is incredibly thick and rugose. Think bearded dragons, plated lizards, genus Gyrosaurus, similar. And what happens is the super intensity of the skin is developed to be thick and only allow a tiny amount of UVB to be transferred through that skin. Leopard geckos conversely and crested geckos conversely have got incredibly thin, wafer thin skin, which you'll have seen when they shed, and therefore the transmission is a lot higher. Coupled with that, the reduction in melanin and melanophores and the natural pigments that would protect the animal from the sun's action, and potentially we've got a problem. So one of the consternation points was this, but also somebody said, well, yes, I've got an albino iguana, or look at the thickness of an iguana skin, and in the albino form, yes, I absolutely believe that they still require UV. I'm not arguing. I'm not saying that they don't require UV, but until I can quantify how much and be able to prescribe that, because me and Paul are in a position where we have to serve the public. So to guess is a bit of an issue, and moving forward, some sort of prescription for these colour forms and colour types needs to be achieved. Now, the problem that we've got is that if a leopard gecko can live 20 years on synthetic D3, but it could live 25 years under UV, we simply don't know, because no one's been keeping under UV for that length of time animals that traditionally we never afforded UVB to. I mean, Jesus, 25 years ago, we hardly gave UV to anything, even ones that definitively needed it. So I defy anybody to come out of the woodwork and go, oh, my leopard gecko's been kept under a 10% T5 for the last 22 years. It hasn't. So when it comes to proving that something is required or isn't required, or quantifying when we overexposed it, did we underexpose it, what was the prevalence of metabolic bone disease, is there an effect to retinal damage on these albinos long term, to the leucistics long term, does the transmission of UVB differ between leucistics, between amelanistics, between other things, are we potentially putting animals that have got no eyelids at even greater risk of retinal damage, so snakes, the albinos and colour types there, because you know they're incredibly long lived. I mean, certainly some of the big boas or pythons, we could be looking at 30 or 40 years lifespan. Now, if we're going to give them UV enriched circadian rhythms where they're potentially exposed to this. Now, obviously, that we're not saying that you're putting it in a blank tank. I know that the counter argument is that you're going to have lots of hides and they should be able to shuttle between light and dark. So I get that as well. I mean, it's super interesting, and I'm not necessarily arguing with anything that particularly the guys on Reptile Lighting are going to come back and say. So, I mean, you can flame me if you really need to, but all it smacks me of is zealotry at that point. This is supposed to try and be a devil's advocate, and plus I want to know, I want the answers, because me and Paul want to be able to help our customers. It's just a super interesting subject, and you know, I'd love to listen to people's advice and people's thoughts, and you know, supplying UVB. But then remember, this is specifically about the animals that have been manipulated by man. How do scaleless animals go on? So if we've got scaleless beardies, how much extra damage is it doing by not having scales to put them under these super high output T5s or mercury vapors or metal halide bulbs? I mean, that's an interesting one. I'd love to know the answer to that one. We move forward at such a pace, and the fact that this hobby seems to, in the past 10 years, the level of acceleration of understanding and the conversations we can have and how adept people are with keeping and understanding and the research that they go through makes this a super exciting time to be involved in the hobby. But what it also does is it kind of creates more questions quicker than we can provide answers, and I believe that this is one of those situations. And until I've got some sort of definitive answer to give with regards to how much UV I am supposed to provide for an animal, it's okay for you keepers at home to experiment. But if I cock it up, or Paul cocks it up, and we prescribe something that is wrong or wholly unsuitable to an animal, then that's on our backs. That's on us. And that can't slide. That's not good enough. So when somebody comes up and will inevitably say, I use this, Well, who else uses that? How long have you been using it for? Is there any way of quantifying how much UV serum it's creating in its blood? Is there any? Have we done any bone density tests on it to make sure? Do we know? Can we compare that to any other research? Has anybody else done it? Well, the answer is no, because it's all new science, relatively speaking. So it's then being able to quantify what we do. And I haven't got any answers. Normally I do these videos and I'm telling you loads of stuff and waffling. And now I'm waffling without any clear direction or any answers to give you. So what a wonderfully confusing situation this is. But if you could, by all means, spare 2 minutes. Write down your thoughts. The thing is, right or wrong, I don't believe that this is a fully complete science, not when it comes to the colour morphs. Yes, I absolutely like the research that Reptile Lighting has done on quality testing, quality control, and the educational programs that Roman and Francis have put together are second to none. And I won't question it. And I urge every one of our 10,000 followers on Facebook to visit Reptile Lighting. This is not a business. This does not support the advertising of any products. This is purely research and recommendations on UVB lighting. So that is a plug. I respect what the group's about. I respect what they're doing. And I air my right to not consternation, not argue, not flame or rag on people, but just simply to say, but that's what I'm doing. And, if people can answer, great. So I hope you're all well. Me and Paul will see you soon. From Snakes and Adders, peace.